Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate and today I'm going to be talking about what I'm planning on reading in the month of September. Normally I would be referring to this as a TBR, however it is already just about the middle of September and I'm only just now getting this out, so it's less what I'm going to be reading and more what I'm currently reading and hope to get to next. I am participating in Book Roast's Magical Readathon this month. I'm probably going to do a video for this towards the end of the month. Since I didn't get a video out announcing what I was doing for that, I'll probably just do an overview of how it went. If you are curious about it, this Magical Readathon is a really fun blend of kind of like RPG elements and also reading, like standard readathon elements. So I highly recommend checking out her video on it. She put so much work into this and it's just flat out amazing. I've been so impressed by it. So look forward to a video towards the end of this month or possibly at the beginning of October where I'll talk about what I read for this and kind of the character that I created for it. So that should be a lot of fun. I am no longer going to attempt to limit myself to 5 buddy reads. Honestly, I enjoy buddy reads and read-alongs too much to really care. So I'm just going to focus on really prioritizing the 5 goals that I have set for myself, which I'll get into here in a minute. And if I have a bunch of buddy reads, whatever. I'm not going to worry about it because they're too much fun and I don't feel like limiting myself, so I'm just embracing the buddy read life. So, moving on to what I'm planning on reading in September. The first one I'm going to talk about is a carryover from my August TBR, and that is the first book in the Wheel of Time, which is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I am pretty mixed on the first 35% of this book, but I do really want to continue reading this and see if my opinion changes in the other 2/3 of the book. Hopefully it'll turn it around some and I'll kind of get more attached to other characters. Right now I don't care about most of them except for Perrin and Nynaeve are really the only 2 I like. So we'll see what happens. It took a long time for Lord of the Rings to win me over, so hopefully Wheel of Time will do the same. So now getting into my goals. The first one on the list is a nonfiction pick, and for this I have an ebook. So this book has been on my list for a little while. There have been a number of alternate history fantasy titles relating to the Napoleonic era that I've been really interested in. I had gotten interested in that time period in general back when I was in high school, when I read Bernard Cornwell's Sharp series, which I absolutely loved. So I really wanted to kind of get more of a grounding on the French Revolution and the Napoleonic era. So the one I picked for this month is A New World Begins by Jeremy D. Popkins. And this really covers the French Revolution from kind of the beginnings all the way through. I have already started this since it's middle of September, and I'm in love with it. It is so well done that I want to recommend it to absolutely anybody who's interested. I'm only about 15% in, but I think if you're interested in the French Revolution, it'd be hard to find a more comprehensive and engaging description of it. So I definitely would recommend this. I'm pairing the audiobook and via script and then the ebook and really enjoying this one. So I'll definitely report back on how I felt about it by the end of the month, but I'm expecting this to be a pretty high rating overall. The next category I'm going to talk about is my 2 Our Fantasy picks, and actually this month I have several that count for Our Fantasy categories. For anybody who doesn't know, Our Fantasy is a Reddit community and they have a bingo board with 24 different categories. You can either do the regular mode, or you can do hard mode, which has extra stipulations for each category. This started in April and is going to March of next year. I'm doing pretty well on it so far, but I have actually 4 books this month that would count for this, so it gives me a little bit of wiggle room, which is kind of nice. The first one that I'll talk about is The Bone Shard Daughter. I won't talk about this one too much. I think it's been making the rounds on BookTube in general. Asian-inspired fantasy that has to do with a bone shard emperor whose magic is relating to bone shards. And then his daughter basically loses her memory, and she needs to regain that memory in order to be an heir for the throne. And then there's some other point of view characters. That's the basics of what I know about it. For our fantasy, it counts for hard mode for set in Asia, since this is definitely Asian inspired. And Andrea Stewart is of Asian descent, so it counts for the hard mode for that category. The next R Fantasy pick that I have is 9 Fox Gambit. I think this one I'm actually likely to get through, A, because I'm super excited for it. Angela from the Literature Science Alliance had really sold me on this, and I mean, it's little. It's like a space opera sci-fi that's tiny, so I really want to get to this month. This would, in fact, count for the A to Z genre guide for space opera. And then the hard mode for that is a BIPOC author, which Yoon-Ha Lee is. So this should be really good. Most that I know about it is that it's a space opera with kind of heavy sci-fi military aspects to it, and that all is very intriguing to me. Space, I don't generally read a lot of sci-fi, but space opera is an arena that I really like, so I'm definitely looking forward to trying this one out. Then the next one, which I don't have physically, is Cradle of Sea and Soil by Bernie Anespas, and this one is based, I think it's a mother and son, and heavily influenced by Caribbean islander culture. I know there's magic. I honestly don't remember much about the story other than that, but this has the benefit of also being indie published, so I want to make that a huge priority since I didn't get to my indie published book last month. And it sounds really good. I haven't read too many books that are influenced by islander culture, so I'm definitely looking forward to that one. And the category for that one is a Latinx author, and the hard mode is that it has less than 1,000 Goodreads ratings, which thankfully this one does. So, well, not thankfully for it, but thankfully for it fitting into this category it does. And then I'll definitely, if I really enjoy this, I'll definitely be talking about it in a dedicated review to try and get it more ratings. Then my next category is a series continuation. For this, I am picking Arm of the Sphinx. I have started this, I just haven't been able to devote as much time to it as I would like. I loved Senlin Ascends when I read that last month. I've really been looking forward to picking this up. So hopefully by the next time I do another video, I will have finished this. But this is going to be my series continuation for September. Then my book Riot recommendation, just as an overview for anybody who hasn't seen me talk about it before. Book Riot is a website that usually they have all kinds of lists and articles related to bookish news and books to read next. They also have a service that they call TBR, which stands for Tailored Book Recommendations, where you can subscribe to them and they'll send you a list of books that they would recommend for you based on if you have Goodreads or Storygraph, and then whatever feedback you give to them. And then they also have an option where they'll send you the books. I tend not to do that because I don't need to spend way more money on books. It's already a problem for me, so I just have them send me the list. advisory. I'm not sponsored by Book Riot, I just like the service. And one of the pick that I'm choosing for this month for that is Hench by Natalie Zena Walshots. Not sure if that's how you pronounce that person's last name. But this has to do with the henchman of a supervillain gets hurt by a hero, and then she kind of goes on a mission to expose the true cost of superheroes, and it sounds very entertaining. I genuinely enjoy a lot of superhero stories, so I'm very curious to see this take on it and see how I feel about it. Luckily, this also counts for an R fantasy category, which is a revenge-seeking character. And the hard mode for that is that the revenge is central to the plot of the book, which clearly is here, so that'll work perfectly if I get to it. Fingers crossed I do, since that's one of my goals. And then the last category I've already mentioned, which is a indie published book, and I'm going to be using Cradle of Sea and Soil for that, since it works for multiple categories, so that's perfect. Now I will talk about the buddy reads that I have on the list for this month. Several of the ones that are listed on my goals categories are also buddy reads, but these are specifically ones that are only buddy reads and don't fit anything else. The first one is, I have two for shelf space. The first is Hyperion, which I don't have in a physical format. I'm reading that via ebook from the library, and I have the audiobook on Audible. And I have actually already started this third of the way in, and I love it. This is one of those classics I hadn't gotten to because it sounded too weird, to be honest. It has very Canterbury Tales, but in space vibe. With some pilgrims who are trying to make this really dangerous journey to this temple, to a creature called the Shrike, and they're basically telling each other their stories of how they got there, hence the Canterbury Tales reference. The audiobook for this is fantastic. I started the audiobook after I was a third of the way in, so I've only heard the audio for the poet's story, and he's so good. I absolutely love the voice that the narrator picked for it. I'm having so much fun with Hyperion, way more than I expected to. So I definitely will be finishing this one, probably within the next week, because I'm having a hard time putting it down. Next one that is a shelf space buddy read is The Blade Itself. This one is a reread for me. I had read the original trilogy, the First Law trilogy, in 2014, I believe, and loved it. And I had read a couple of the standalones, but I didn't get to Red Country. I haven't read Sharp Ends, which is the anthology, and then I haven't read the Age of Madness new series, which just had the third book in that series just released. So perfect timing for me to go in and reread the original trilogy, read the standalones, and then get to the new one. I'm really enjoying, I've already started this because I couldn't resist. I had a bad day and I just needed some Abercrombie. So I've started this one and I'm loving it just as much as I did before, and I'm also having a really good time reading this with people who are reading it for the first time and kind of seeing what their reactions are. I know First Law isn't for everybody, but it's hands down one of my favorite series ever, so it's really fun to return to it. Chewie. Best dog. Then I have two read-alongs that I'm doing with Evie. I'll link her channel below in case you want to join for any of these, but I read Dune in August, and then she is doing a read-along for the rest of the series, one book a month. So I would like to get to Dune Messiah this month. It's one of the shorter Dune books, so I'm hopeful I'll be able to get to it, but we'll see. So hopefully I can continue in that story, and hopefully I continue enjoying them. Chewie, enough. No more licking. Pest dog. The other book that I'm reading over in Evie's Discord is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. So I had not originally intended to pick this book up because, not that I wasn't going to read it at all, but I wasn't going to buy it. I was just going to wait for it to become available at the library. I loved The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and I definitely want to read basically everything he's written. But I don't really like slashers, the horror movies, very much. So I wasn't... This story is based around a young woman who is a huge fan of slasher movies, and then it sounds like she ends up in one, basically. And I think he's going to do a really good job with that, but because it's not really my preferred horror genre, I wasn't going to worry about picking it up. But then Evie and Leslie talk so highly of it that I felt like I had to pick it up. And so this one, I have no reason necessarily to make this a priority. Like, it's not a goal, it's not I think most of the people who are buddy reading it have already finished it, but I really want to get to it. So I'm really going to try and get to that this month. Chewie, fucking quit. Enough. Pest dog. So, hopefully, I can fit that in. And then the last book that is a buddy read that I'll mention is Fellowship of the Ring. I actually read this in March, I believe, of this year already, and I really enjoyed it. It was like my third attempt at it, and the audiobook finally sold me on the series. But it turns out that Ryan over at Seeking Stories and Klaus from The Contradictorian are doing a read-along of the Lord of the Rings books, and it's absolutely perfect timing because the audiobooks that are narrated by Andy Serkis are finally going to be here this week, so I may end up setting multiple things aside so that I can dive into Andy Serkis narrating The Lord of the Rings. I adored his narration of The Hobbit. It was amazing. So I'm stoked to get to this. So even though it's not a goal, and even though I just read it earlier this year, I'm going to dive back in. I'm very excited about it. So definitely going to be adding that one this month. So that is the list of all the books I'm going to try and get to this month. I make no promises about actually making it through all of these books, so I guess it's as much an MBR as it is a TBR, but I'm enjoying my reading so far this month, and fingers crossed I can get to a lot of these this month. But either way, should be a good reading month. Let me know what you're planning on reading this month. I hope if you've read any of these that you will tell me about them, what you thought of them, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!